Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Lenara's Holmeswealth the 15th. Happy Father's Day. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of The Wayward Knights by Roland Green. I'd like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate links. Now, this is just my perspective. If yours differs, or if you share insights or have insights that I don't cover here, please leave them in the comments below if you're watching live. Thanks for tuning in, and you can actually leave them in the live chat. All right. So normally I do long pre-written reviews, but lately I just haven't had time to make notes while I'm actively reading because I'm doing this to and from work. And so I try to fit these reviews in as I have time and opportunity, and that is not very often, clearly. So thank you for understanding that. Corey, how you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. All right, this is, and again, like, it's hot as balls outside, so you're getting, like, the stripped-down version of Adam today. I just got off a insanely hot hike, which was a lot of fun. I loved it, every second of it. But, again, I'm exhausted, so I'm not going to even pretend to dress up. So I hope that's all right. All right, so this is the fourth book and final book that covers Sir Pirvan the Solamnic Knight, who started out as a thief in pre-cataclysmic, it's the Age of Might. I would say like sort of Istar era, because Istar is always this sort of pervasive threat that is seen as a corrupt empire, but hasn't yet taken that massive fall that would cause the cataclysm yet. And again, this is like, I mean, this could be anywhere from 100 years to 300 years before the cataclysm. We have literally no idea about the timetable that this happens in. At least I haven't been able to nail it down. I've listened to all of these in audiobook form, which, look, I don't think audiobooks are the best way to read. I'm a originalist when it comes to reading. I like to hold it in my hand. I just don't have the time to do that right now. And so some books hop around between locations, and they don't give clear delineation in the audio version, whereas if you're reading it in your hands, you can see that, oh, this is the end of a section and it's jumping to another section, and you make that logical leap. Okay, we are now in a different location. That does not come through in audio, and certainly not in DragonLance audio specifically. The authors, I'm sorry, the performers, I guess, the readers, they just plow through the text. And it's so frustrating because I find myself going, wait, didn't we just listen to this part? Is my phone broken? Is Audible messed up? Why does this sound like it, like I just listened to the same exact thing, but there's different names involved? Is this an error? And the reality is no, it's not an error. This is how badly Roland Green writes. This is how terribly. There are some like 200 named characters in this. And by the fourth book, you have characters that have the same name, but their parents, who named their sons or daughters the same name as them, didn't die yet. And so they're using the same names in different locations, talking about different events. And when you're listening to it and you don't know that they just switched over from some island in above Nordmar to some keep somewhere in the plains of Banasinia or northern Solamnia, you just have no idea what the hell is going on. And it's so aggravating to read. So this book is the culmination of not only frustrating reading by the supposedly talented readers, and then, of course, the editors who put it together and package this as an audiobook, but you also have a horrid author who does not make clear distinctions between characters, who uses generic references when it comes to defining what makes a character specific. And nearly every single chapter in this, nearly every chapter ends in the exact same way, with one character whom you're not entirely sure is the father or son making love to another character who you're pretty sure is like you've heard this exact same sort of love-making scene. It if I thought the second or the third book in this 4-book quartet was horny as hell, this is the most horny of all the novels. And normally that would be a good thing. I'm a fan of sex. I'm just putting it out there. But this is not that. This is the most awkward. And they stared at each other and pressed their bodies together. And they kissed. And they felt better about it. It's like, what? What the hell are you talking about? Who? What? It's the most awkward experience reading. Because it's as if... what was that movie called? 50-year-old version or 40-year-old version, whatever it was. When he described touching a boob and he said it was like a bag of sand, that's how these love scenes are written. As if someone who has never actually had a love scene in their real life is writing a love scene. And you're just like sitting here like, I feel like I should feel something because you're writing a love scene. And I like love scenes. I'm a romantic at heart. But I feel weird. Like, this does not resonate at all with me. And it wouldn't even be worth mentioning, except like I mentioned, it's all over this book. Like, almost every ending of every chapter has a scene like this. And so you can't not mention it in a review about it. It's so aggravating. And last review of this, hey, Lauren, how you doing? Oh, weird. Weird that you're on that side of this conversation. I'm not sure. Not sure how I feel about this. Now I have to perform. No, like, it was a very awkward experience reading through this and knowing that I just said the last book, it was like Stockholm Syndrome, the last of the third of the fourth novels. And I was like, yeah, I've sort of turned a corner. Not because the writing's good, because it's not. Not because the story is put together well, because it's not. But because of the world events. This novel tore all that apart. It completely... What you would like to think of when you read a trilogy or a quadrilogy, I don't know, 4 books that are linked together, is some sort of like through line. You know what I mean? Like something like that happens in book 1 is going to somehow manifest in book 4 in some epic scale, right? They drop tons of teasers in every single one of these novels, and nearly none of them are paid off. And it's really aggravating as a reader because all you want is some sort of through line. And like even the kids, this is like 20 years later after book 3 to book 4. It's almost 20 years. Pirvan's a Knight of the Rose. We never saw the ceremony. We're just told it. And here's a little side note. This guy came to be from a thief. And then some rich lady suggested to some knight that he would make a good knight. And so he became a Knight of the Crown. At no point do they ever talk about why knights are the way they are, why Knights of Solamnia are the way they are, or why the different orders exist, or what differentiates each order of knights. Knights of the Crown are soldiers. They're warriors. Knights of the Sword are priests. Sort of like paladins, like warrior priests. And Knights of the Rose are the leaders. They are the captains. They're the ones that think about grand strategy. And each of these orders has very significant differences as far as a character's development. And, according to Dragonlance lore, if you're not from a noble family, you cannot be a Knight of the Rose. But that doesn't matter in this, because who gives a fuck about anything, and we're just going to write a story, right? Which then begs the question, why did you write this in Dragonlance? It doesn't make any sense because you're throwing around terms and they don't mean anything the way that you're throwing them around. And so for fans, arguably demented and obsessive fans like myself, who care about stuff like this, it drives us insane. Like, why are you doing this? All right, so that's one horribly awful note. There's still no differentiation that is clear between, 1, a mage and a cleric, and 2, that a mage somehow that goes from being a white robed to a red robe to a black robe, and then to a brown robe, which is a renegade, that they somehow are more powerful because they've experienced all of the robes. This isn't like a karate black belt 12-year-old who has like progressed through the different kata and learned how to kick, which, by the way, if you're taking karate so that you learn how to fight, I would just ask you to watch any fight ever, and there is never a fight that begins and ends in some sort of weird karate stance. 98.7 times of all fights, full stop in life, end with a ground game. Wrestling mostly, with people out of breath and kind of wanting to stop because after like 30 seconds of fighting, you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks and it hurts. Can we just be friends? That's how most fights end at like the high school and below age. In any case, karate kids. I just never understood why he's treating these different orders of knights as if they're like progressive belts that someone just earns after having, like killed so many people or something like that. It doesn't make any sense because that's not what it's about. This is not like a grind until you get enough experience and then you go talk to your guild master in some video game and they like level you up to something. It's stupid. All right. That rant over. I don't even know what that means, Lauren. All right, so there's two main story beats in this story, which, again, on the grand scheme of things, could have been woven into Dragonlance culture and lore and been really wonderful. But of course they weren't, because this author clearly doesn't know doesn't know anything about Dragonlance. So the first story beat is Sir Pirvan going to some volcanic isle to defeat some sort of evil wizard that has, for some reason, decided to take on this isle that minotaurs and humans sort of coexist at. It's like a way station type thing. And this wizard, and again, there's like this threat of a kraken or something like that. And if they ever saw like the Sinbad the Sailor cartoon, I think DreamWorks or someone did, like, I don't know, maybe like 15 years ago or something. Brad Pitt like voiced some character in it. It reminds me of that, where it's just one sea creature fighting a bunch of people after another. And it gets to a point where it's almost slapsticky silly because they've already fought like 3 of these things. And then there's another sea creature that just comes out of everything. And there's tentacles everywhere and they're cutting them down. And I would be okay with it if the author described combat well. You can tell where I'm going with this. He does not. He does not at all. Literally, one of the events started and ended like this. He's like, and they were getting prepared for battle. And the battle was long and exhausting. And that was the battle. And you're just like, wait, you're literally not going to describe anything? It's just like, you build us up to this event, and then you say it's over. It was like House of the Dragon Season 2, when it ended. The entire season is building up to this great war. And then there's like, next time on House of the Dragon will be war. And you're just like, you just told me about this war for the whole season. What the? You're just like angry. That's what this was. Very frustrating. The second story beat is Pirvan's son in his home, and there's like this threat because some woman hid some sheep. I'm not making this up. And so that gave justification for some sort of Istarian silent group order to create some sort of mercenary group to come and assault the keep because Pirvan's keep accepts refugees. It's that convoluted and ridiculous. And look, there's elements in this that, if written well, would be gold. Like, the reality is there were Knights of the Divine Hammer, this secret organization that went around destroying every single cult, whether they were good, neutral, or evil. If they didn't follow Paladine, the king priest had his knighthood go out and murder everyone. And if you didn't murder them, you locked them up, you stole all the artifacts, and you put them in his little stash, which was ultimately the Tower of High Sorcery in Istar, once he kicked the actual Wizards of High Sorcery out of it. So there's story beats like that in this, where there's like these silent... it's like another sort of brown shirts thing from World War II, or ICE from our world, where this group, I know people are going to be all butthurt about that, but it's life. This group that's like set upon the citizenry who don't quite fit the mold that the king priest want. It's actually a little too real right now, actually. That doesn't quite fit into the goodness that the king priest sees as goodness. And so if you are not that brand of goodness, then you are sort of set upon by these silent warriors that come and try to murder or abduct or cause some sort of regional chaos or war or something to depose you in some way. That happens. And that is a story beat that is interesting and could be played out really, really well if a little bit of time was spent to explain it and to dive into it and speak about the greater scheme of Istar's designs. But it never does. It just focuses on the individuals that suffer from it. And so you don't ever get that grand scope that it's hinting at. And the only way, as a Dragonlance fan, or just as a fantasy fan, we'll say, the only way that you would know the depth of world development or the machinations of the empires in this era is if you're an obsessive compulsive freaking nerd like me. No one else would know, because you don't really understand the era and the time this is happening, or the different organizations or empires that are sort of rivaling, fighting amongst each other at this time, the different races that are sort of standing up and like pushing against Istar. And if you don't know any of that, then this makes zero sense. You would see Istar as an evil empire the way it's described. And that is diametrically opposed to how it's supposed to be perceived, which is the glory of the storytelling, because we're supposed to believe that Istar is the shining light on the hill, kind of like America. And then the darkness that starts corrupting it from within descends and spreads out amongst the nation and its neighboring nations, like America. And then it has secret organizations that try to stifle its own citizenry, like America. And it's so resonant with our current era because it's so relatable to our current era. But if you don't know that history, there's no way this book will ever resonate with you in that way. And so you're just stuck with shit writing, horrible sex scenes, terrible battle descriptions, and then, we're going to throw in a Demernasty sea elf that turns into a badger and a dolphin from time to time. What the hell is happening in this book? It's ridiculous. All right. So instead of talking through things, you get like eyewitness accounts of events, which again actually destroys the impact of the event more because you don't feel invested in the event. It means nothing to you as a reader because you don't spend the time developing it. And again, this is one of the 4 novels in this quad, whatever we're going to call it, about Sir Pirvan that Roland Green wrote, that the titles of the books literally mean nothing to the book itself. The first one was Knight of the Crown. There was not a Knight of the Crown in it. The second was Knight of the Sword. There was a Knight of the Sword in it, but it had nothing to do with the actual story. The third one was Knight of the Rose. Didn't mean F all, because he's not a Knight of the Rose until this book. And in this book's called The Wayward Knights, which actually doesn't have any indication to anything. And then we also get this sort of weird vibe of Pirvan going off on these adventures in the previous books, and all these people that he meets, he ends up bringing into the knighthood. And they just become Solamnic Knights because that's just like a thing you do. It doesn't make any sense, and it strips away what it means to be a Solamnic Knight, which strips away what the order itself is supposed to represent, and strips away the authenticity of the actual world. I don't know. I'm complaining. I get it, but that's what this book seems to be designed to do, to make you complain about it, because it doesn't make any logical sense at all, as far as the Dragonlance novel goes. All right, so what else? We get. I actually really like sailing and ship battles and fighting sea creatures and stuff like that. And we get a couple of those, which is fun. And I like the idea of like an evil wizard, but it's clearly referencing the Isles of Taladas, which is this island chain that is the sort of gap between Taladas, which is the northern hemisphere continent on Krynn, and Anslon, which is the southern hemisphere continent on Krynn, which everything happens in. And there's this chain of islands between, but there's also this subterranean sea elf nation that lives there. And there's this sea wizardess, like a hag or some sort of evil ancient being that threatened the world and the sea elves, and they narrowly defeated her, and it's this huge big ordeal. And you'll only understand this if you have picked up the supplement Other Lands, which is a AD&D second edition supplement for Dragonlance, right? It talks about this. Well, in this, there's this location called Swevenari, which is this island, which he could have just had as one of these Isles of Taladas, right? And it could have been, there's this human island that during the Cataclysm sunk and was swallowed by the ocean, sort of like Atlantis almost. And then the sea elves just took it over because it sunk. But that's where you get this sort of the machinations of this evil sea wizardess, right? The evil wizard in this could have very well been that hag, right? And that would have then connected it to other existing lore, which would have spanned hundreds of years, which adds a bunch of this epic sort of drama and care and concern. And this island could have been the surfaced version of that island. And so now that island has a history beyond the Cataclysm itself and just sinking, right? There's investment from the Demernasty into this island. And there's an existing evil wizardess that becomes this sea hag later on because of the events of this novel. That could have been a thing, and instead, nothing. Like, we get Bupkis. It just sort of, this, it's this evil, powerful person that just wants to, like, stir the pot. It's just so frustrating, dude. So frustrating reading this book. And the worst part is I read it through once, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Because, again, duplicate names, no clear differentiation between skipping between different eras and stuff, locations, not eras. And so I started reading it again just to prep for this, and I started getting more confused instead of less confused. It's so aggravating when this happens. And again, you could make the argument that, oh, well, he's just not paying attention to the audiobook that he's listening to. And okay, that would be fair, except that I've reviewed dozens of audiobooks on this channel, and I have never been confused about any of those. It's just these 4 from this one author. So, yeah, it could be me, or it could be this author and the performances by the readers of these books that are really doing it the true injustice. And look, I got to be slightly fair here. And we do have to recognize this type of thing, right? Not every author, as they're writing it, in their head is thinking, oh, this is going to be an audiobook. What are the structural issues that audiobooks have, and how can I overcome them preemptively in my writing to make it very clear that this is a new section or this is a new character, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't know that your book is going to be made into an audiobook, you're not thinking about that. And when this book was made, it was originally written, audiobooks were very, very rare. They're more like radio dramas and stuff. So he probably wasn't ever thinking that Audible was going to be making this into an audiobook. He was just writing a novel. And so, you got to give a little bit of, grace, I guess, because of that aspect. But there's other serious issues that just make this a terrible novel. And the entire 4-story series that Pirvan is featured in, a terrible series. And I still believe, because of the era, because of the events, because of the characters, a good author could come in here and make this into an amazing Dragonlance TV series. Like Game of Thrones. I'm not even being hyperbolic at all. This could be rewritten into being an amazing pre-cataclysm Dragonlance story with evil, powerful wizards, dragons, holy knights, sea adventures, underwater adventures, massive nations at war, political intrigue and drama, and sex. Who doesn't like sex? It could be amazing. It just needs a new writer and someone who is going to weave in some of the known world events and world tie-ins that would actually make it palatable for people who don't know anything about Dragonlance, but also enriched for those who do. But this is not the author to do it, and this will never happen, unfortunately. But that is the scope that is behind these 4 novels, which is sort of frustrating for me, because I see what it could be, and I'm left with what it is. And that's disappointing. All right, so what do you guys think, Corey? Dry and drawn out. The sex scenes very much. Probably never read lore before writing the series. You're probably right. Hope he didn't destroy the Brotherhood of Steel. There's no Legion of... If you're talking about Legion of Steel, that won't happen for hundreds of years into the future, and he never touches it. Inja Joe, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in, man. You watched the stream with James Lowder, the guy who voiced Commander Shepard today. They discussed Knights of the Black Rose. James Lowder was great as an author, and his the 2 Lord Soth novels he wrote, I think, are fantastic. The best Lord Soth-centric novels ever written. There is another one, Ido van Belkom, who I interviewed on this channel, who wrote the Lord Soth novel, which is in this Warriors series that I'm reviewing right now. And it's a good book. I really enjoyed it. It's just not as good as the other Lord Soth novels in Ravenloft. And James Lowder actually was supposed to write a 3rd Lord Soth novel, bringing Lord Soth back to Krynn. And it was probably going to follow along some similar lines to the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition module, When Black Roses Bloom, which there's an actual play on this channel. Check it out if you haven't already. 2nd edition, actual play. A lot of fun, a lot of great players, a lot of great characters. But I think that was the end payoff to those 2 novels, because Margaret Weiss and Trace Hickman came in, as they have done historically, and have ignored everything that other authors wrote, and they just do what they do, which I enjoy, but it is also a little bit frustrating when you're trying to wrap your hands around the entirety of the Dragonlance saga, and you're only given little snippets depending on which author decides to write. And you're just like, why can't you guys just get along? Why? That's our life. All right. You're very welcome, Corey. The next novel I'm going to be reviewing is Vinus Solamnis. There's 2 books in that series. The first one is Vinus Solamnis. The second one is Fist and Daedalus Reborn, both of which I'm very excited to read. I've never read them before. Don't know anything about them. I know of both characters, but not the stories that I'm going to read. So look forward to those. Let me know what you thought of The Wayward Knights if you have suffered through the 4 Sir Pirvan novels that Roland Green has written. I would love to hear your perspectives on this. If I'm way off base, please explain how, because I am open and willing to understand it. I just had a horrible time getting through these 4 novels. So that is it for my review of The Wayward Knights by Roland Green. What did you think of the Istar expansionism and taxation? Oh, I didn't update these notes. Would you watch a political Game of Thrones style story based on these books? And finally, do you think the author should ever write any other Dragonlance stories ever? Let me know in the comments below. Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com as well. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. All this goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. So, this channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of DragonLance Saga. Thank you so much for joining in that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.